When I say you don't need a motorcycle, what I really mean is I don't need a motorcycle. More specifically, I don't need an electric motorcycle. I have to continuously tell myself these words because I keep finding myself wanting to get a motorcycle when I really don't need one. Little background on me: I used to commute on a motorcycle back when I was in college. I got my license when I was 19, and I spent a few years zipping around in an old 1989 Kawasaki KLR 250 that my dad and I found and brought back to life. It was a great little bike, and I always had a blast riding around on it. It could barely go like 70 miles per hour, but I didn't really care because I was having so much fun, and it got like 80 miles to the gallon. Eventually, my dad sold the bike, and I stopped riding motorcycles for a while. Every once in a while, I'll catch myself looking at Facebook Marketplace for deals, or visiting Royal Enfield or Zero Motorcycles websites to see what kind of bikes they sell. I love the feeling and power of internal combustion engines, but I've always been drawn to electric vehicles. I always loved the idea of zooming down the road silently, and I like the idea of never having to stop at a gas station. Then I look at the cost of some of these electric motorcycles and what kind of range they can get, and I inevitably come back to the same conclusion. You don't need an electric motorcycle. But I still love that feeling of flying down the road on two wheels, carving up the pavement, and not having to be stuck in a boring and expensive car. That's why a couple of years ago I got a mountain bike, slapped an electric motor and battery kit on it, and started cruising around. Over the course of 2 years, I've put about 3,000 miles on my e-bike, and I thought it could be fun to talk about how much I love my e-bike and why I think it's the better option for me, but also maybe you, instead of buying an electric motorcycle. You don't have to have a license. This one doesn't really apply to me because, like I said, I got my motorcycle license when I was 19. I still wanted to mention it though because I imagine to the right person, this is a huge deal. I was lucky enough that my dad always had motorcycles, and I was able to use them to practice riding and get my license when I was young. But this isn't the case for a lot of people. I'm also thinking about the early teen version of myself. I would have loved to have an e-bike when I was between the ages of 13 and 16. At that age, I felt old enough that I could go out by myself, but I was always relying on my parents and other people for rides. Let me give you an example of how an e-bike could have changed my life as an early teen. I was a competitive swimmer from the age of 10 until I graduated college. I used to swim for multiple hours every day, sometimes going to 2 practices a day, one before school and one after. I would wake my parents up at 4 in the morning so that they could drive me to swim practice. While I swam, they sat and waited. We had an old slide-in camping trailer, and sometimes my dad would drop me off with it just so he could go to the parking lot and get a few extra hours of sleep. I honestly don't know how they did that for all those years. If I had an e-bike though, when I was that age, I could have been driving myself to practice and to school, and I never would have had to bother my parents to chauffeur me everywhere. I didn't even live that far from school or the pool I swam at. Today, I regularly commute 14 to 20 miles round trip on my e-bike, and I love it. It's way cheaper to buy an electric bike than an electric motorcycle. Part of the reason I love my e-bike is because it saves me so much money. E-bikes are also way cheaper than electric motorcycles. If you were to order the same motor and battery from the same site I got mine from, it would currently cost you about $1,650. But the starting price for the kit and the smallest battery is less than $1,000. Most decent electric motorcycles that are capable of highway speeds usually start around $7,000, and they only get more expensive as the performance and range increase. But I think the real money savings come in the operating costs. Compared to a regular car or an ICE motorcycle, my e-bike is way cheaper because it doesn't need gas, and the maintenance is so simple and infrequent that I can pretty much do it all myself. My e-bike is also a lot cheaper than an electric motorcycle too because I don't need to pay insurance on it either. No range anxiety with the e-bike versus an electric motorcycle. I think range anxiety is a real thing when it comes to electric motorcycles. Electric cars can get away with just adding bigger and bigger batteries and improving their aerodynamics, but motorcycles don't really have that luxury. It just seems a bit ridiculous to me to spend 7,000 grand or more on a motorcycle that can only go 50 to 100 miles before needing a charge. Sure, my e-bike is a bit slower than most electric motorcycles, but one of the benefits of the e-bike over the electric motorcycle is that the range is greatly extended by the amount of pedaling I do in addition to the motor on the bike. On the throttle alone, my bike can get me about 20 to 30 miles of range, but as soon as I start pedaling, that range jumps drastically. If I ever do get to the point where my battery is completely drained, it's not a big deal because I can still pedal the bike. I once took my e-bike on an overnight camping adventure. When I put it on the medium pedal assist, I was able to get about 40 miles and still had about half the battery life left. I would not be surprised if I was able to get 60 to 80 miles on one charge if I used the motor modestly. And if I really wanted some extra range, I can always just bring a second battery or a charger with me on the e-bike. E-bikes are easier to store than electric motorcycles. When I was commuting by motorcycle in college, I used to have to cover my bike with a motorcycle cover to protect it from the elements. If I forgot to put it on, I would no doubt wake up in the morning and see that my bike was covered in water because it rained overnight. One time, I was heading down to my motorcycle in the parking lot when I stopped and realized that my bike wasn't there. It had been stolen, and even though it was found at a later time, it was still a major inconvenience since it was my main method of transportation. I don't have to worry about these problems with my e-bike because I store it inside my apartment. It is definitely heavier, but it's still light enough that I could carry it up a flight of stairs if I had to. It's small enough that I can squeeze it into the elevator at my apartment complex, which makes it really nice for wheeling any groceries I get right up to my kitchen. I could go on more about the benefits of an e-bike over a motorcycle. I love how I can still pedal my e-bike if I want to get some exercise on my trips. I love that it's so easy to work on because bikes are really fairly simple machines, and I love how much cheaper the maintenance is too. I know it's not exactly the same as a motorcycle. It's pretty limited on how fast I can go on it, and I know for some people it's a lot dorkier than a real motorcycle. I don't think that. I think my bike looks pretty sick, but that's just me. I'm not saying that I'll never get a motorcycle or that I'll never get an electric motorcycle, but I don't see myself getting one in the immediate future because I'm able to get the same thrill on my e-bike for way less money. For those reasons, I'm going to keep reminding myself that I don't need an electric motorcycle, and maybe you don't either.